Hello everybody. I put a video the other day about this Eden project which had happened in Brighton, but as I was looking, it was bringing up conservatories, and a lot of these are old conservatories, so nice, but obviously on big houses, but they're just so nice. Look at this. Maybe some of them aren't that old, but those are like, well, we would say Victorian, whether they are or not, or even older, but just so elegant in a time where we didn't have a lot of money. But when you look, this is a drawing here, but just look how magnificent it is for a time in the past. Obviously that's a modern house there, but some of these are amazing. But I think, oh, there's an old one down there, look at that one over there. But I think you get my drift of what I'm talking about. There's a nice one there, and then look at this one over here. Anyway, we are going back to the only picture that there seems to be of the Eden project. So this is on Wikipedia, but there are no pictures, not even any drawings, which is quite incredible really. But what it says there is that in 1832, well, basically what happened was this dome building had a pillar in the middle of it. This is my other video that I found out, and not long before the opening ceremony they took it out, hoping that the structure would remain and everything would be all right. This thing was 1.5 acres big. I mean, that is quite a big structure without any support. And then just before the ceremony, which was in August 1833, the thing fell down. Its wreckage stayed for 20 years. And yeah. And Phillips went blind from the shock of watching the largest of his many projects end in disaster. Yes, Hove, see? Adelaide Crescent location. There's a bit more information there that you can read about him. It's very sad that they took the pillar out, really. I mean, 1.5 acres is a huge building. And why would you think the whole thing could support itself without some form of structure? When you look up, it only brings up the Eden project that's down in Cornwall. It's so annoying. You have to hunt, and then eventually you find a bit of information. So that tells you how they constructed it. The cast iron girders were imported into the nearby Shoreham Harbour and taken to Hove by teams of horses. About 40,000 square feet of glass were used, although sources differ as to how much had been fitted at the time the building collapsed. Work began in 1832 with the construction of a circular foundation trench to the depth of 12 feet. Phillips had commissioned Eamon Henry Wiles to design the structure and supervise the early work. Later he brought in C. Hollis as the chief engineer and Mr. English as the building contractor. The main course of the series of unfortunate incidents which the project turned into was the fact that no single person was in overall charge. And that seems very sad when it was such a big project and very important. They weren't working as a team. Wilde's began as design included a central pillar of iron, whose capital would support each of the iron ribs. These would be diagonally braced and further supported by, what's that, purlins? Purlin, yeah, I hope that's rightly said. The 16-foot 4x9 metre cupola would then sit on top of the pillar, and around the top of the dome there would be a terrace with a diameter of 27 feet, 8.2 metres, enclosing an observatory. Wow! Building work progressed on this basis, but English and his team decided not to build the central pillar to reduce the size of the supporting structures of the roof. Well, the story I had was they took it out. The reason for the decision was not recorded, but it alarmed Wilde so much that he redesigned the project. Hollis and English nominally took charge of the work. Hollis had also wanted to keep the supporting pillar and tried to encourage English to reinstate it, or at least to continue with the original scheme of purlins and braces. English refused to do this, and after an argument, Hollis resigned from the project. This left no personal architect or engineer to oversee the work, and English was able to act much as he pleased for 3 months without supervision. It just seems so strange when all this money has gone into this project that nothing seems any different then than it does today. As construction continued, the summer of 1833, temporary scaffolding held up the roof. Henry Phillips decided to ask engineer Sir John Rennie for advice on whether this could be safely removed. And on 29th of August 1833, 2 days before the unveiling, English removed the structure. This may have been because he was angry at the implicit criticism of his workmanship, although Rennie decided not to visit Hove and inspect the structure after hearing Phillips' description and situation. The lack of any structural support means that the ribs, which were meant to sit exactly opposite each other, started to bend out of alignment, eventually ending up several degrees askew, pulling the upper circular junction into an ellipse shape. English expected that the pressure could be supported by the terrace and observatory, but this did not happen. Just an hour after it was removed, the last section of the scaffolding, on August the 30th, 1833, the structure started to crack. All of the builders left, and only the head gardener stayed. A second, much louder crack forced him to run outside and jump over a wall. In the ground. The shock of the disaster made 54 Williams go blind. He never recovered his sight. Wow. But, as said, this thing was 1.5 acres big. That is enormous. I can imagine with all that glass flying around, I'm sure that he was blinded by the glass. Yes, but I don't think so. Well, anyway, let's carry on. Sources vary to the extent to which it had been glazed when it had collapsed. The Times report of 1st of September 1833 stated that the work was due to begin on September the 3rd, but elsewhere it is stated that all or some of the glass is already in place. Thomas Smith of Union Street in the Lanes, Brighton, was named as the glazier. He apparently reclaimed undamaged glass after the collapse and sold it at a workshop. About 2 acres of panes of glass were said to have been required to cover the structure. Wow, that is a lot of glass. Obviously there's nothing there anymore of it. The ruined, I don't know how you say it, theorem, or however you say it, sorry, enjoyed a certain amount of prosperous celebrity. The tangled remains stayed there until the 1850s and became a tourist attraction. The Times reported that several hundred people had visited on the day of the collapse alone. English and the other builders disappeared and apparently left the country. Sir Isaac Goldmid was left distraught at the disaster, which may have contributed to his loss of enthusiasm for the residential development it was sponsoring at Adelaide Crescent immediately to the south. Work based on Burton's design was abandoned in 1834 and did not resume until 1850. The scheme was scaled back and resumed by a different architect, but it never happened. It never went back up. It's quite incredible that they had the technology to be able to even build a building 1.5 acres big, even if it had a pillar in the middle. Don't you think? That is 1 acre of land in a field. I mean, how many houses could you get in there? So how big that roof was. 1.5 acres. 1.5 acres. Look, there's the farm. Look how big this building would have been without a central support. That one says 1.5 acres. That says 1.5 acres. You could probably get 3 houses in there. We're talking of 1825, I think it started, didn't it? We're talking of that time. The building was that big. That says that land is 1.5 acres. Oh yes, even though they were different shapes, we did have that one, which might have been an underground train station, you know, for the pneumatic trains. So older than they said it was, but anyway, it's very big buildings. This one says the Great Exhibition of 1851. So they could do these things then, couldn't they, if they built that? And that's got that date on it. Well, I'm looking things up here because I want to see what kind of machinery we had in the world. And they're talking about all this. It's very interesting, but I'm going to have to put another word in because, you know, but that I found that I'd never thought about that. So these threshing machines, by 1830, they had replaced manual labour, which displaced the farm workers. Right. Okay, we're going to put another word in now. I put in building machinery. This is what it's saying about the 1830s. And then it stops. Well, there you go. Cranes were first developed in the ancient Greeks in the 6th century. Ancient Romans. And then here, William George Armstrong invented the first modern crane in 1838. So he could have used that on that Eden project in Brighton, Hove. It was powered by water and the use of a hydraulic jigger to lift the head. There you go. 1800s. Cranes were invented. Right, well, I think that's the point I just wanted to make. Oh, let's have a see if there's any pictures. Right, I see. Well, there is a crane down there with wheels on it. These ones, most of them are fixed. They're fixed where they're built there and fixed there. So maybe they didn't at all have a crane or any structure like this to make those things. Then how incredible were they? How did they do it? But our history is a lie. Nothing is the truth. Or maybe they fitted one of them there to make the project. Yeah, anyway, thanks very much for watching. What's your thoughts?